What's going on, everyone? So, Bleacher Report has been doing their rankings, and they recently ranked the starting fives and the best starting fives in the NBA. And I want to talk about where they rank the San Antonio Spurs, give my thoughts and opinions. Of course, I want to hear yours down in the comments. But diving right into it, the Bleacher Report, again, this is Bleacher Report, they gave the San Antonio Spurs the 13th best starting five in the NBA this season. And obviously it depends on what is, and this is a question, period. We all kind of have our thoughts and ideas on what it should be, but the projected starting five that they went with is De'Aaron Fox, Stephon Castle, Devin Vassell, with Harrison Barnes and Victor Wembanyama. Now, that is a starting five that I think many people think is what it's going to look like. I've even talked about that starting five. I've seen others mention, instead of Stephon Castle, going with him off the bench, going Fox, Vassell, Harrison Barnes, Jeremy Sohan with a Victor Wembanyama. I do think you could even argue, maybe kind of go the big route, move Wemby to the four and go like a Luke Cornett. I think that would, if you're playing like a Memphis that has like an Edie and a Triple J, maybe you could do something like that. Beauty of the Spurs is they have several different iterations of what a starting unit could look like for them. And, I don't think any answer is really the wrong answer, which, is a testament to their roster in depth. But again, this is just solely on their starting fives, right? So going off of what they projected and going off of just their projected starting fives, because I'm going off of the information that we have, right? De'Aaron Fox, Stephon Castle, Devin Vassell, Harrison Barnes, and Victor Wembanyama as the 13th best starting five in the league. If I'm being honest, given Bleacher Report, I think that's actually pretty fair. Their rankings are usually not great, right? And you got to keep in mind, this is the entire league. This isn't like the Western Conference, where they're the 13th best, right? So to put in the context, who is above them, right? Because I think that's important. Atlanta with Trey, Dyson Daniels, Zachary Rizichet, Jalen Johnson, and Kristaps Porzingis. Okay, right? I think you can make an argument for the Spurs, but okay, I don't hate it. Minnesota, Mike Conley, Anthony Edwards, Jaden McDaniels, Julius Randle, Rudy Gobert, back-to-back conference finals with that unit. Okay. The Los Angeles Lakers with Luka Doncic, Austin Reeves, Rui Hachimura, LeBron James, DeAndre Ayton. Again, okay. Memphis Grizzlies with Ja Morant, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Jalen Williams, Jaren Jackson Jr., and Zach Edey. I don't really that's one. I don't are they the 9th best starting five in basketball? I don't think so. Hey, I don't personally. Right? I actually would put Memphis behind the San Antonio Spurs. Okay, so that would move the Spurs down to 12th. Okay, I think you can make an argument for Atlanta. Right, so if you want to say 11th, fine. But then 8th is the New York Knicks, right? And you have Jalen Brunson, Josh Hart, Mikal Bridges, OG Anunoby, and Karl Anthony Towns. Okay, it won't push too much there. Orlando, Jalen Suggs, Desmond Bane, Franz Wagner, Paolo Banchero, Wendell Carter Jr. They're going off of basically their plus minus last year and kind of how good they were there. Okay, sure. You have the Warriors as 6th with Steph, Brandon Podziemski, Moses Moody, Jimmy Butler, and Draymond Green. Okay, I don't really know how that's going to, because, they might have Al Horford. So I think the Warriors are kind of an asterisk right now. Not because they're not a better team. Clippers, okay, on paper, sure. Right? Houston, again, on paper, sure. Cleveland, we're the best team in basketball, not named the Thunder. Nuggets, okay, sure, and OKC. Right? So I think if you wanted, to argue that the Spurs are, in that 10 to 13 range, fine. There's 2 teams, that Atlanta and Memphis, I'd probably for sure put the Spurs over. Outside of that, I think, you can make the argument either way, right? So, let's say right outside the top 10. And again, this is counting the East and the West, right? And again, you look at the Spurs, there's several things. What will Stephon Castle look like in year 2? How, Harrison Barnes, is he able to kind of stay and play the way he was last year? Or do they go with Jeremy Sohan? Do they go with Devin Vassell? Is Devin Vassell kind of play like he did last year? Is he kind of get back to being the guy that we've seen that he could be? And then, again, you could, with these kind of things, you can make the argument, for or against. I'm sure, lots of other people would argue, well, Spurs aren't even the 13th best team, right? Like, you look at like who did they have behind them, right? You had things like Philadelphia. If Philly's healthy, right? Tyrese Maxey, Jared McCain, Paul George, Kelly Oubre, and Joel Embiid, if they're healthy, I mean, that could be tough. Detroit, they had actually behind them with Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey, Sir Thompson, Tobias Harris, and Jalen Duren. Again, is that something that you could argue for, especially how good Detroit was kind of last year, especially on the defense side? And then they have, and then you start getting into like Indiana and Boston and all these teams that, Dallas, they had as 18th. I think Dallas, you could argue, is better. So again, like, now, granted, they didn't have Kyrie Irving in that, so it was based on not having Kyrie Irving. So again, I think the 13th spot is actually fair for this team, for this roster, for kind of how young this team is. Right? There's some question marks about how guys kind of continue to progress and evolve. I'm not too bothered by it. I think you can make the argument that they could be a top 10, but that just kind of gives you the fuel to the fire, right? That gives you that whiteboard material of like, hey, this is something, right? Like, this is like, keep in mind, they think you're the 13th best team, 13th best starting five. I shouldn't say team. Like, this isn't the overall team or where they think they'll fall seating wise or anything like that. This is just solely based on, on starting fives. And I mean, okay, so like if you go over this last little kind of point that I think is important, right? So let's look at the Western Conference teams that they have ahead of them. They have Minnesota, right? You have the Lakers, you have the Memphis Grizzlies, you have the Golden State Warriors, you have the Los Angeles Clippers, you have the Houston Rockets, and then you have the Denver Nuggets and the Cleveland and the Oklahoma City Thunder. So they have 8 teams ahead of them, right? So that means they think, if you're going off of this, that the Spurs would be basically the 9th best Western Conference team, which I think they're in that 6 to 8 range. Like I've talked about, I could see them, because of how tight the Western Conference is, kind of stumbling into that 6th seed, based on tiebreakers and stuff. But I think 7th, 8th, I think realistically, would be a fair assessment of them during where they'll rank this season. But in the same breath, I think, again, you never know how these things are going to shape up. You got a lot of teams that are projected to be pretty good that might not. That might just be terrible, right? Then you get teams that, are projected to be terrible, they're actually pretty good. And so there could be some teams that, maybe the Spurs just kind of hit their stride at the right time and go on some run, and all of a sudden you look up and they're, the 4th seed, right? You never really know how these things are going to kind of shape up and play out, right? But anyway, as always, so there's a discussion. I pass a question to you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments. What do you think? How do you feel? What are your thoughts? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Kind of mixed in the middle. Either way, love to hear it. So let me know down in the comments. That being said, if you haven't liked this video, hit that like button. Helps me out. I've enjoyed these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. Not subscribe to the channel, hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell notifications. Appreciate y'all. See you in the next one. Thank you.